I request CA Yerisamy C, Chairman, Ballari Branch of SIRC of ICAI, to escort our esteemed speaker, CA Himanshu Krishnadwala, onto the dais. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for CA Himanshu Krishnadwala. Welcome, sir. I request CA Yerisamy to briefly give an introduction of the speaker.
Rank holder in inter as well as in final course of Chartered Accountancy. He is in practice since 1985. He is a partner of C&K and Associates LLP Chartered Accountants Mumbai, having 400 plus staffs. And they are having the branches at Vadodara, Chennai, Bangalore, Ahmedabad, Delhi, Pune, and even in Mumbai, Dubai also. His other activities are, he is an ex-senior lecturer in accountancy and computer systems at Narsi Munji College of Commerce and Economics, Mumbai. Co-author of various books on accountancy and financial management for BCom at Mumbai University. He is involved with the ICI, cooperative member and special invitee for several committees and study groups like INDIAS, Implementation, and ITFG Group of Accounting Standards Board. Expert Advisory Committee of ICI, Accounting Standards Board, Research Committee, Corporate Laws Committee, etc. Member of Study Group for Drafting Guidance Note on Revised Schedule 6 and Guidance Note on Schedule 3. Member Shield Panel, ICI for ICI Awards for Excellence in Financial Reporting for members of FRBB groups for review of financial statements, large companies. Involvement with BCS, Bombay Chartered Accountant Society. He is a president of BCS during the year 2006 and 7. Chairman of Accounting and Auditing Committee of BCS from 2009 to 9-10 to 12-13 and 16-17 onwards. Compiler of column from publishers' accounts, appearing monthly in BCS journal since more than 20 years. Delivered lectures at various seminars, conferences, presented papers and written articles for ICI, BCAS, CTC, IFAC, etc. on subjects of accounting standards auditing. Director and member of audit committees of various companies. Now I present before you Himanshu V. Krishnadwala. Thank you.
We are here in a post-lunch session and on a topic which is on internal audit. And I am surprised to see so many people in the hall because it is a topic on internal audit post-lunch and after the chief guest has delivered his talk. But the topic is very interesting, and as we go along I am sure you are all going to get interested in this topic, which is how can an internal auditor become a business leader, or how good is an internal auditor likely to be a business leader as such. Now, for many of you who would have heard me in some of the other programs, I normally do not speak on this internal audit topic, though we do it in the office. We have a very big team who does internal audit, some of whom are present here today. I personally don't normally talk on internal audit. So what made me maybe accept this invitation to talk on a subject like internal audit, which is, and the reason why I normally don't take it up is mainly because it's something perceived to be a very dry subject to talk on as such, especially on a post-lunch session. So this is something which my office put together when I said, yes, we are going to speak on this topic as such, and they have put a photograph of mine from the past. So obviously I am not a business leader, as I said, I am not a specialist internal auditor. Then why am I speaking on internal audit today? And the reason is very simple. I have traveled a lot of places in India speaking on various assignments, executing assignments on could be audits, could be management audits or something. And having seen what is happening across India and maybe even outside India, this is a topic which I believe is a very interesting topic which the organizers thought it deemed to fit. And therefore, instead of talking something on true and fair every time, I thought this, or our office thought this is better that I speak something on how can an internal auditor become a business leader in that sense as such. And trust me, having seen so many things over the past 20-30 years, the developments in the profession, internal auditors are really will be able to grow in the situation of a business leader as such. So this is what we are going to just cover in this session which is there. What is internal audit? We try to demystify some of the aspects of internal audit. Some practice areas which are normally open to a chartered accountant, obviously including internal audit. What makes a good internal auditor and what makes an internal auditor a good business leader? That's the crux of the entire thing. What can make him a good business leader as such? Now if you look at this definition of internal audit, this is a plain and simple definition which comes from the Institute of Internal Auditors. Now, if you read this definition, by the time you come to the end of the definition, you will fall asleep, because it goes on and on. What is internal audit in that sense? So, and therefore we have also said here that I start seeing some yawns post-lunch session, because this is how the definition of internal audit looks like. Okay? So obviously I am sure some people would have started adjusting the surroundings so that they can have a good nap for the next 45 minutes to 1 hour as such. Okay? So this is what exactly we also know, that this is what can happen. So we have broken down this definition of internal audit into some different components. And these are the 4 things what is there in internal audit. So if you look at these 4 things, the first is compliance is both external and internal. And this is, I am sure all of you do this, because the first job of an internal auditor is, oh, have you paid the TDS in time? Have you paid your taxes in time? Have you filed your returns in time? That is the first job which an internal auditor does. Has the employees punched in their cards in time and so on. So that is the first job of an internal auditor. Compliance is both external and internal. The second, and that's a growing role, and is talking about risks and controls. What are the risks does the organization face, and what are the controls to mitigate or overcome those risks? That is one of the second objectives of internal audit as such. One of the third objective is, if I have got resources, how do I optimize the resources, the costs and the processes? That is the third role of an internal auditor, or an objective of an internal auditor. And the fourth, and probably a very important role of internal auditor, if you see this last thing, can you guess what that would be all about? That last thing is all talking about ethics. So an internal auditor also, one of his objective is the governance processes, whether corporate governance is followed and whether there are ethical practices which are being followed as such. Traditionally, internal audit used to do only the first part, but today internal audit does all the 4 things as such. So what is therefore there is, internal audit, the major objective is you add value as well as achieve these 4 objectives which are there. So if you understand this to be the objectives of internal audit, and if you now look at the definition of internal audit, now the definition will look little better, because the definition which we reproduced earlier, if I break down the same definition into different parts, it is the same definition but with the 4 things which we talked about on internal audit as such. Okay? So now I think you can see some maybe some smiles that yes, I think I can stay awake for the next 45 minutes, because there may be something interesting which is likely to come in the next half an hour or so as such. Okay? So this is what we are going to say. What is internal audit? It adds value, improves operations, accomplishes objectives, risk control, risk management, governance processes and so on. So the same 4 things which are there is what is internal audit, and we are going to juxtapose all these things and see that how a combination of this makes an internal auditor a good business leader as such. Okay. When an internal auditor is asked to do a job, it is not as simple as a statutory audit. When you appoint a statutory auditor or when you get appointed as a statutory auditor, it is very simple. You know that you have to follow the Companies Act, you have to see some vouchers, and finally you have to follow Schedule 3 and certify your balance sheet as true and fair. When you get appointed as an internal auditor, it is not that simple. There has to be some value addition to an internal auditor. So what are those value additions? And that is very important from an internal auditor perspective. If you are appointed an internal auditor and you say that, oh, I am just going to check your vouchers and other things, they will say we don't need you because we have got our internal people, we have got other people, our statutory auditors, they do all these things. So the first thing is an internal auditor is expected to have some value addition, and that is obviously a challenge which you sometimes face. So value addition with reference to internal audit means that how is he able to achieve or exceed the objectives of a company which are set as such. The value addition may be quantifiable and tangible. Like you try to reduce the wastages on the shop floor, you have some other tax benefits which can be better utilized and so on. But you need some value challenges which are value addition and challenges. And what could be the challenges which you face? When you appoint an internal auditor, he may say I will bring this value and that value, but the cost is absolutely tangible. You know what are you paying the internal auditor. So you can easily try to find out, you can find out what is the benefit of that cost when you are appointing an internal auditor as such. And a statutory audit is considered more like a regulatory function, that oh, I have to do a statutory audit, so I cannot avoid that cost. It's something like going to a doctor and paying his fees. So in a statutory audit, you have to go to a doctor, you have to go to the statutory auditor, the company has to appoint someone, get it certified, and those are the fees which he has to pay. So that is built in. However, when you appoint an internal auditor, the first question which a businessman has is, I am appointing an internal auditor, what benefit will I get from him? And that is what is the challenge for an internal auditor. Because every money, every penny which is paid to an internal auditor is tested as to in return what will the organization get. You don't appoint an internal auditor just to look at your books and say, oh, everything is fine. You expect some value addition, and that's a challenge for internal auditors. And in internal audit, value additions are always called for, whereas in statutory audit, no one asks you for it. They only say, please sign the balance sheet at the time when we want it. That's all. There's nothing else which is asked from a statutory auditor. But from internal auditor, you are asking much more things, could be tangible, could be intangible. And that is where the current internal auditor's role is there. So when we talk about value addition, the value addition has to be at multiple levels. It has to be to the entity which you are auditing, as to what is the value you are going to add to that entity. It has also to add value to the firm. The firm which is doing the internal audit, they also have to come up with something. They also have to have some internal value addition. Only then they can offer proper services. And to the auditor also. So at all levels there is a value addition which is expected, otherwise you are not supposed to be a good internal auditor as such. You are otherwise doing something called as an internal auditor but not really performing the function of an internal auditor as such, and we will see how this can happen. What is a unique feature of internal audit? A unique feature of internal audit is it combines two things. It combines the assurance function and the consulting activity. Sometimes you say that I am in management consulting practice, and whatever you do except maybe audit, everyone says this is management consulting. But if you are an internal auditor, you are doing two things simultaneously. You are not only giving an assurance, you are also doing a consulting activity. And we will see that in the next slide, which is a graphical thing. And many areas of practice, there are a lot of regulations which are there. So if you are doing statutory audit, you have a scope. If you are doing tax audit, you have a scope. You cannot go beyond that. But if you are doing an internal audit, it doesn't have a fixed horizon as such. You can go wherever you want depending on how good is your comfort with the management and how much value addition you can give in any of the areas which you are handling as such. So if you look at these three things, if you look at assurance, Assurance can be done by a statutory auditor only. If you look at compliance, a direct tax person can do compliance. If you do advisory, it is on business processes and transaction, that is management consultancy. An internal auditor can do all the three. So an internal auditor can also control the assurance. It can even comply or test your compliance and confirm your compliances. And it can also give you advisory services on maybe processes, IT systems, testing, or whatever it is there as such. So if you look at this thing, your assurance is restricted, your advisory could be restricted, but as internal audit you have a very wide horizon and a wide scope to do whatever is possible. In the past, internal auditors have not been doing lot of things, but today an internal auditor can do all these things, and it's a very wide scope which is there as such. Now, we try to distinguish internal audit like this. A statutory auditor or a direct tax professional or an indirect tax professional does something what you have on a fixed thali. Now this thali is a North Indian thali, not a South Indian thali. It has no rice on it. It's in that sense a North Indian thali, but it's a fixed thali basically which a statutory auditor has to give you. If you go to an internal audit or a risk and a compliance function, that's a la carte, that you can order whatever you want. You have a lot of choice in internal audit. You can decide, I will do this, I will not do this. First year I will do this, next year I will do this second thing or something as such. So we believe that internal audit has a very wide scope, and it can be juxtaposed, it can be interchanged, it can be modified year after year, just as you order a la carte when you go to a restaurant as such. When you look at corporate governance, you have got four basic pillars which are there. You have audit committee, you have internal audit, you have executive management, and you have the external audit which is there. If you see, without an internal audit, corporate governance will not happen, because then you have only three legs on a table which will not make it stable as such. So just as you have got the executive function, you have got the audit committee and the external audit, you also need internal audit to have a proper corporate governance setup which is there. And this is not something applicable only to listed companies, this is also applicable to private limited companies beyond maybe a particular size. May not be very true for family run companies, but most companies which are beyond a particular size, you need all these four things which are there as such. Again, if you look at internal auditor and statutory auditor, over time, how does a statutory auditor develop and how does the internal auditor develop? If you want, you can start with this left side thing which is on statutory audit. When you start statutory audit, you first try and do general audits. You will do audits of all sorts of companies. Then you will say that, oh, let me specialize in the audit of a particular industry. So you specialize in a particular industry, and then you go for super specialization in statutory audit. So if you go to the bigger firms, and if you say that I am a statutory audit partner, you will be told that you are a statutory audit partner only in banks, only in the finance sector. But when he started his career as a statutory auditor, he would have done everything, manufacturing, agencies, everything he would have done, slowly moved up to super specialization. What happens to an internal auditor? An internal auditor starts internal audit with one function of a company and moves and expands his horizon. So he moves from a single function or a company audit to industry audits to multiple industry audits. You will never find an internal auditor who is specializing in a bank internal audit, but he will say, I will do internal audit across all sectors, across all industries. I may have specific persons within a team who can do everything or who can do only that part, but as an internal auditor, I will do all sorts of industries. A statutory auditor after 20 years, 30 years will say, I am super specialized. I will do only bank statutory audits. If you ask him something about manufacturing, he says, sorry, I don't know how to audit a manufacturing company. But go to an internal auditor, they would say that yes, I can audit any sort of company, because they know what is the job involved in a internal audit as such. So this is a very interesting slide, and if you look at your own experience, you will see that statutory audit moves up like this, whereas internal audit moves up like this. So in internal audit, if you are doing from day one, after 20 years, 30 years, you may find a very big horizon for internal audit. But in statutory audit, your horizon will actually become narrower and narrower as such. Now, if you look at the internal audit, those 4 things which we started with, the definition of internal audit, what does it really tell a chartered accountant or teach a chartered accountant as such? When you start an internal audit, the first question which you ask your client is, what business are you in? Without that, you cannot do internal audit. What are your business objectives and aspirations? And what are the risks, obstacles and concerns? These are the 3 questions which an internal auditor, a good internal auditor will ask the company when he starts doing an internal audit as such. Now, without understanding all these 3 things, I cannot start an internal audit. Statutory audit, you don't need anything of this. Because when you start statutory audit, you will just tell your team, oh, go and start doing bank reconciliation. Or go and start doing some bank vouchers and such things. But in an internal audit, without documenting, without understanding all this, you cannot ever able to start internal audit as such. Now, what does this mean? That internal auditors have a far better business understanding than statutory auditors. So internal auditors will have a far more important or a detailed understanding of your business as such. Internal auditors understand the organization structure of a company. They know what is the hierarchy of the company, and if they find something wrong, they will try and say that you need to improve your hierarchy. They will also time their audit in such a way that it is not in the busy period. Statutory auditors always come in the busy period. So internal auditors normally time their audit so that they do not go in the busy period, because they don't have a deadline in that sense on completing an internal audit. And if internal auditors are taken seriously by the company, they will have their own space in the company. Typically, most companies have a set of 2 tables and they say this is for auditors, whether statutory or internal. But if you are able to give a good value addition as internal auditors, you will have your separate space. And your space will not be encroached upon by either the statutory auditors or tax auditors or anyone per se, because as a good internal auditor, you are considered part of the organization. You are not considered as someone who is coming to do your audit as such. And therefore, you need lot of communication skills, negotiation skills when you are doing an internal audit, and that comes automatically if you understand the business of the company very well. So if you are in healthcare, you should know how a patient is admitted, what happens in the treatment process. You don't have to get into medical terms, but you should know what happens, what is happening when the discharge takes place and so on. If you know all that, you will have your own space in the organization after the management, and statutory auditors will have nothing to do with it as such. Now, there are a lot of jargons obviously in a lot of industries. So as internal auditors, you have to be clear what you are talking about, okay? Because as a statutory auditor, you may not know all this, you may not be able to get into nitty-gritties or something, but as an internal auditor, when you write, as we have put here, a DR, it means it's a doctor in a hospital and not your debit or credit as such, okay? So as internal audit function will cover all business functions. You get cooperation of all functions, you speak their language. So I am going to put something in an internal audit report which is in the language of the organization, not something which normally cannot be understood. Then if you are not able to connect with the functional heads, then you will have a problem. So whether it is procurement head or the sales head or the manufacturing head, you have to connect with them. You have to connect with them in such a way that you have to make them believe, or you make them believe that yes, you are going to help them to improve their efficiency. Whether it is procurement or sales or even say manufacturing processes. If you tell a procurement head that I am going to sit and understand your entire procurement process, and I am going to ensure that some of your processes get simplified so that your work becomes simpler. If that is told by an internal auditor to the procurement manager, he would actually like what the internal auditor's work is all about. So this is what internal auditors will have to do, communicate well with the users of their services as such. And internal auditors in today's world, a good internal audit firm will have multidisciplinary teams. So if you are going in a Hospital, you may need someone who has some basic medical background. If you are going maybe in a manufacturing concern, you may need someone who has some engineering background or something. So the teams can be multidisciplinary. In a statutory audit, you will never have something like a multidisciplinary thing. And as internal auditors, when you try to understand an organization, multidisciplinary teams are better, and therefore you add much more value to the organization as such. We said already that an internal auditor can do both things, assurance as well as consulting. Now obviously when you do both the roles, there is a balancing to be done in the assurance role as well as the consulting role which is there as such. So when you give a independent assurance, you do which is given there on the left side, which is historical perspective, focus on reporting, where the solutions are left to the management. So that is something which is very restricted, because you cannot find solutions to why did the company not make a profit. That solutions are normally left to the management. Should I change my product mix and such things. But when it comes to the organizational value which an internal auditor can do, there he can do a lot more value addition and give solutions to the company. So not only control focused, even efficiency focused. So today good internal auditor not only finds faults, he will also say that yes, I have found this fault, but I am also going to provide you a solution to the fault. Only then he is a good internal auditor in that sense. So I work with the management to develop solutions. I provide balanced reporting. I am risk focused. I also give solutions which are having less risk at a low cost and which will add efficiency to the organization as such. And what we therefore call this is the you have to demonstrate that you have the ability to walk the talk. And tell the company that yes, if I am telling you that this is something which is worthwhile doing, please try it out, because this is something which will help you to cut your costs or increase your efficiency, at the end increasing the value of the whole process which you are doing as such. An internal auditor is normally also called a troubleshooter. Who is called when there is some sort of a suspicion of a fraud or something? Who is called by the management? The internal auditor is called. You will never call a statutory auditor if he believes that there is some fraud which has happened in the company. You first call the internal auditor. He doesn't come with a toolkit like this, but he does come when you call an internal auditor as such. Okay? So any investigation, anything which has gone wrong, maybe in a procurement you find that too many duplicate payments have started happening, you will first call the internal auditor, will you look at my process, what has gone wrong somewhere. You will never call up the internal auditor as such, the external auditor as such. And when you call an internal auditor for troubleshooting, the internal auditor has to be aware as to what is he called for, and he has to give the right solution. If he does not give the right solution, he will not be called upon that job a second time as such. And that is what is shown here, that if you call someone when you need someone, he has to do the right job. He should not come and do the wrong or give the wrong solution which is there as such, as is depicted here in this picture. The person is giving the wrong solution in this. He should be giving the right solution in this, but he is giving the wrong solution in this. So a good internal auditor will give you practical solutions by understanding what is the risk. In this case, this picture clearly explains what is the risk, what should be the solution, but what is the solution being offered. Okay? So an internal auditor's job is clearly like this. You have to identify the risk and give the right solution, and not a solution which is wrong, which is given here as such in this picture. So internal auditor today does occupy a center stage in management meetings, because there is a change management, technology adoption, risk management and compliance architecture, and ethics and governance matters. Now all these meetings which are there for change management, technology adoption, a statutory auditor would not be called. An internal auditor would be called for all these functions, because an internal auditor thinks beyond financial aspects like a business leader. Okay? And this is what we are moving to slowly, that because of the role of an internal auditor today, he is more likely to become a business leader as compared to any other professional with whom the business is really aligned to as such. So if there is some new system to be adopted, a new SAP to be adopted from say Tally, internal auditors will be always there in the meetings because they know what is the risk, they understand what are the processes and other things. If there is some new payroll or something which needs to be activated, some new office to be started, they will say that okay, in this office we need the following controls, and the internal auditors would be first called upon and not any other professionals as such. So internal auditors, because of the nature of their work, can think and does need to think beyond financial aspects like a business leader. A good internal auditor understands the impact of external technological developments, provides early alerts, suggests preventive measures to cope with the changing environment, converts technological threats into opportunities for business growth. And let me tell you a very simple thing which in technology innovation internal auditor can help. You have a lot of companies who have to do this inventory verification. You have companies, almost all manufacturing setups who need an inventory verification to be done almost every month, and the items could be running in thousands and lakhs and crores. So every month there is a physical check being taken. You follow sometimes what is called the ABC analysis. You sometimes do a random checking of the inventory and so on. There is a new technology which has come which now enables physical verification to be done very fast, and that technology is normally through handheld scanners which you hold on your hand. You move it in the room or in the godown and it can scan what inventory is lying in the godown, and you don't need to then physically go to each drawer and check up the item as such. Now if you want to put in that technology in your inventory verification, the internal auditor will be the first one to give you the checks and balances on it. That when you are buying the scanner, this is the process you follow, this is how you will do it, so that not only will it help you to speed up your inventory verification, it will also help you to do it more accurately and in lesser time. After everything is decided between the company and the internal auditor, only then maybe a statutory auditor would be called in to say that we have developed the new system. You please validate with this new system which is going to replace my current physical personal verification of inventory. Time has come today that when inventory verification is done in the past by people moving around in the godowns and factories and other things, it will be done by a combination of scanners and drones. Drones will do inventory verification. You have a drone which you control, it will go scan all the passwords, all the passcodes which are there, and in 10 minutes it will tell you in this warehouse over which the drone has flown, there are so many items which are lying in the warehouse. So that is physical verification. Now when you are trying to replace current things with technology, the internal auditor will be the first one to tell you what are the processes to be developed for it. And this is a role which internal auditors can play with a lot of accuracy, with a lot of experience which they have as such. Okay? And mind you, if you are saying that, oh, I do lot of stock audits, I do lot of stock audits for the bankers and all that in the next 5 years will be replaced by technology. And to see to it that that technology will do it in a proper way, processes will need to be developed, which only an internal auditor can help you to develop those processes when they are playing that consulting role which is there as such. So in all these examples, whenever technology is used for replacing something, it is the internal auditor's role which is becoming much more important than that of any other professional within the organization, because he can also play a consulting role or a value addition role as such. Now if you see, traditional banking has given away with everything. In fact, in the break here there was an advertisement running that on a phone, that Standard Chartered advertisement running that on a simple phone you can open a bank account, make some payments. Now that technology, who will validate the technology? Who will set the processes for that technology? It has to be someone who understands the business. It cannot be statutory auditors, it cannot be outside consultants. It has to be internal auditors, because only they understand the industry, they understand your company per se. So whenever all these technological changes happen, internal auditors will play a big role in that validating everything as such. And soft skills, internal auditors also need to possess soft skills which other professionals need not do. For instance, take a statutory audit report. You have to only change the year and whether it's a profit or loss. More or less everything else remains the same. But the internal audit report never remains the same. Everything changes. If something remains the same, they will say, oh, this is a repeat observation. So nothing changes, nothing remains the same in an internal audit report as such. So internal auditors have a lot of soft skills, and all business leaders need soft skills, because in a business, if you are a business leader, you do need to talk to people, give communication in writing and so on. And you need technical knowledge, and you also need to innovate, because as internal auditors you have to be up to date with whatever are your technological innovations which are there. So obviously technically you have to be sound with whatever is currently there, but you also need to innovate for the future as such, and that is again how you provide value addition through internal audit as such. And something which is very complex, an internal auditor can bring in some tools to simplify that and bring it to an understanding of the business HODs or whoever is there. So that is again a role of the internal auditors. They can play it very well. Again, with their soft skills and the lateral learning to move with the strength, they can easily do all that to become really business leaders in that sense. So effective writing and fair reporting, internal auditors have to learn to write brief, crisp, clear, concise reports. Again, what a business leader needs to do. Internal auditors are given sometimes very small time in meetings. When your internal auditor attends the audit committee meeting, he is told, please finish your presentation in 15 minutes. So they know how to be crisp and clear on what they are presenting, which is also something a business leader needs. They will also write in a way that it doesn't amount to criticizing something. They will normally tend to write something which says, yes, there is something deficient here, and this is what needs to be done to overcome that deficiency as such. So it is more of a positive thing what they write. And internal auditors do get dedicated management meetings. Statutory auditors may not get so much time except maybe at the audit committee, but internal auditors will get a lot of time with the heads of department, because both understand each other. A statutory auditor neither has the time or inclination to get into those meetings, but the internal auditor will understand what the other person is saying and actually try and help to solve his problem as such. So, managing costs through planning, innovation and technology, and internal audit knows how to do this, because as we said right in the beginning, whenever 1 rupee is paid to an internal auditor, the company expects 2 rupees worth in return. So internal auditor knows internally, how do I manage my time, how do I manage my costs, and how do I become more efficient as such. So by nature, internal auditors are more cost conscious, because they are not paid for doing nothing. They are paid because they are going to bring some value addition to that as such. And innovation in the context of internal audit. Internal audit of course faces its challenges. You have to do more with less, minimizing the impact of audit on business while maximizing the insights, streamlining processes, getting the resources model, getting technology for better use, demonstrating the value added which is there. All this is a challenge for internal auditors, but they can, face it. They have to only maybe put in some extra efforts, and they will be able to face such things. And this is the same challenge which even a business leader faces. If you are the CEO of a company, you will face the same 6 challenges which are there, which an internal auditor also faces as such. And how has the internal auditor evolved now? Earlier it was only for assurance and consulting function. Shifted to implementation, you give suggestions, help us to implement, and now internal auditors are getting into strategy consultation. So the management now sometimes wants internal auditors to strategize even in consultation as to what next is to be done for the company as such. So in summary, internal audit function can or should help in achieving the organization's objectives. Internal auditor has evolved from a traditional auditing role to a more balanced presence, incorporating a role as an internal consultant. And to succeed, internal auditor requires to understand customers' needs right now and on an ongoing basis. If you appreciate what an internal auditor is supposed to do and normally does today in today's environment, internal auditor is no longer something where you just sit and do the vouching and bank reconciliation and just some tallying of the books or ledgers. It has moved to a more process-driven role, more of a consulting and a risk role which is there as such. In that sense, it has moved from the back room to the boardroom, and from the boardroom it can move to the corner room. Corner room obviously means becoming a business leader per se. So internal auditor in an organization, if he is there for maybe 15-20 years, he is one of the best suited persons to become a leader in that organization. We are talking of professional organizations. We are not talking of family concerns where only the son can become the managing director. We are talking of professional organizations where everything on promotion is judged on merit and the understanding of a business as such. And internal auditors can move from what is called a chief internal auditor to a CEO role as such. And in internal audit, what do? You understand business, you understand organizational dynamics, you communicate with all functions, you balance out, you do troubleshooting, you provide practical solutions, you participate in key business decisions, you drive technology innovations, you do soft skills, speaking, writing, presenting and so on, and managing costs. All this is a prerequisite for being a good internal auditor. What is different then from a business leader? A business leader also needs to do all the things which a good internal auditor can do today. And let me tell you, there are specialized internal audit firms or specialized internal audit divisions within firms who do all these things. And an internal auditor, because he does all these things, which is nothing but what a business leader is also supposed to do. In fact, a lot of business leaders may not know all these things which an internal auditor knows. So a business leader, if an internal auditor is going to become a business leader, they will actually become a much better person to run the organization than anyone else whom you can bring from outside, though he may be more qualified or more experienced or something in that sense. So this is the crux of the whole thing. And if you look at your theme which is there, your 360 degrees theme of envision, equip and excel, internal auditors do have changed 360 degrees today to change the perception of business, and internal auditors with this theme clearly are very well equipped to become business leaders in the future also. So I think this is, as a business leader, what internal auditors can also do. If there is time, I don't mind interacting with for some time, if there is some time. Otherwise, thank you very much for this hearing on a post-lunch session. Thank you.
Before moving on, I would like to just take a minute to announce that soon after this, we will be having a really interesting session. It is going to be about alternative investment, a strong investment substitute versus stocks, bullion, real estates. I'm sure you all don't want to miss this, so please make sure that you are here in the auditorium when the session is going on. The audience has a question for you, sir.
Thanks a lot for the emancipating journey. Sir, can you just have a look at the role of CEO in your presentation? Can you go back? Yeah, no, not the last slide. Before that, you gave a role, 6 points on the role of CEO.
This one?
No. I think role of CEO. You give the role of a CEO. 1 minute. No. Later. A CEO's role. One way. Yeah.
Must be this only. Must be this only.
No. Before that, just now we came to that. Just now.
You come and change the slides.
No, sir. There, just now, 1 minute back. Yeah.
Okay. No.
Yeah. Sir, basically, the question is, I'm coming from JSW Steel, so we have our own internal audit department. For that matter, Tata Steel and others, they have their internal department. But what is the premier question comes, that because traditionally by internal audit function we mean a function headed by the CS.
Yeah.
Or maybe some part of the cost accountants or financial professionals. But what we are now finding, because I'm throwing this question for the better higher A of the hierarchy or the higher planes of the total business where internal audit is headed by some external agency. So I'm posing this question. Basically what we are finding that suppose now there are so many projects going on, like companies are doing expansion or projects are on, as long as they are on, so then roads are coming on. So what basically is a parameter that the CEO has to weigh, that that there is no fraud, there is total internal control, and there the physical measurements are playing a very important role, like whether it is civil, that whether the cubic meter which is given is correct, whether there is any juxtaposition or not, whether there is an overlapping or not, or for that matter even a mechanical contract, whether the erection is less than the fabrication, or for that matter in case of a dismantling, whether the control is that the dismantled quantity is less than the erected quantity or more than the erection quantity. These are something. Now these are some specific subjects. Then what we are practically facing is that this finance function may not be able to do that. So then what you said is very correct, that the internal audit can with other professionals like engineers and anything. But what is the question is that in that case one should engage a chartered engineer firm, or one should engage a technical auditor.
Okay.
But because I was heading the Kadapa project of Dalmia Cement. So we had Simplex as our civil consultant, and we had our third-party technical audit firm from Hyderabad who used to audit, and then only the finance was allowed to do the thing, or the charter, or even the internal auditor firm was supposed to check them to vet any bill only after that technical audit firm certifies. So the basic question comes here that in case that technical audit firm is so much inevitable, who are typically a chartered engineer firm with with engineers from civil faculty, maybe mechanical faculty,
fine.
or
Okay.
electrical faculty.
Okay. Fine.
So this is so why should one engage a chartered accounting internal firm?
So when you are all clapping, is it for the question or for the answer?
I think for the answer.
Okay.
Probably of the request of the answer, sir.
Okay. Fine. So I think a long question. To cut the whole thing short, what I believe you want to get an answer is that why should I keep an internal auditor? Instead of that, why should I not keep a technical consultant when a new plant is to be erected or something new is to be done as such? Now remember what was said here, and I'll take you to that last slide which is there. The last slide clearly said that can internal auditors become good business leaders? And what is a business leader? Let me ask you a simple question. Reliance Industries has started this Jio. Do you believe that Mukesh Ambani understands how Jio works? How does the telephone technically work? Does he know how does it work? He doesn't know. Business leaders never get into the details of anything. They only try to understand what is the best technology, whether it is selected or not, and whether that technology is being used or not in the products which they are delivering to the market. Now in that process, if a business leader's role is taken by an internal auditor, the internal auditor understands the organization. Outsider doesn't understand the organization, he only knows what he is good at. So an internal auditor understands the organization, he knows what is good or what is bad for the organization, he knows the nature of the people in the organization. So when some technology has to be identified, if internal auditor is part of the entire team, or maybe he is himself the business leader, will he not be a better person to decide the technology to be used rather than a technical consultant? And that's a question we are trying to answer today. So Jio is using some technology which maybe Mukesh Ambani has selected. Instead of his giving that technology, will a business leader just say that because some technical consultant has given me some answer, I will select that technology, or will he first try to ask in-house that whether this technology, will it suit my organization culture, whether it will meet my objectives? So who is better equipped to handle this? And that's what I was trying to bring out, that an internal auditor has all the qualities of becoming a business leader. Outside consultants have their role. I am not saying they cannot have no role as such, but to decide whether to use that outside consultant or technology or not, internal auditors as business leaders are very important. Okay? Good, there are no claps before I ended.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for keeping us glued to our seats even though it was an after-lunch session. You've thrown light upon how an internal auditor can play a role as a leader in a business organization and how he must speak the language of the organization so that his space is not encroached upon. You also told us about what the value additions will be for an internal auditor. So thank you, sir. I now request CA Yeriswamy C, Chairman, Ballari Branch of SIRC of ICAI, to present CA Himanshu Krishnadwala with a memento as a token of appreciation.
Ladies and gentlemen, typically when it came to